They say a woman's happiest day is her wedding day. But as Claire Bennett knelt on the cold marble floor of the cathedral, her wedding dress soaked with champagne and water, watching the man she loved laugh at her humiliation, she wondered if happy endings were just fairy tales after all. "You were always just useful, Claire," Gavin sneered, standing over her. "A tool for the company. But I don't need you anymore." His family circled like predators, their laughter echoing off vaulted ceilings. 200 guests sat frozen, some recording, others looking away in disgust. Claire's tears blurred her vision as hands shoved her down every time she tried to stand. Then the cathedral doors exploded open with a sound like thunder. Claire looked up to see two figures walking down the aisle, flanked by men in dark suits. Her parents. But something was different. The air itself seemed to change. Every member of the Hartwell family went absolutely still, their triumph dying in their throats. And for the first time that day, Claire Bennett smiled. "Hello, welcome to African Moonlight Tales. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story." Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever? The library's third floor was Claire's sanctuary. At midnight, when most students were asleep or partying, she claimed the corner table near the economics section as her personal territory. 3 textbooks lay open before her: corporate finance, international trade policy, and strategic management. She was cross-referencing theories that most professors wouldn't connect until graduate-level courses. The full scholarship to Riverside Technical Institute's business program had surprised no one who'd seen her entrance exam scores. The administration had quietly verified them twice. Perfection was statistically improbable. But Claire's mind worked in patterns others missed, seeing relationships and opportunities where others saw only data. "You're in my macroeconomics class." Claire looked up. The guy standing there held a coffee in each hand and wore the kind of casual confidence that suggested he'd never been told no in his life. "I don't remember you," she said, returning to her notes. "That's because you sit front row and actually pay attention while the rest of us try not to fall asleep." He set one coffee on her table. "Peace offering for interrupting. I'm Gavin Hartwell. I didn't ask for coffee." "No, but you've been here for 4 hours, and that's your third energy drink." He nodded at the empty cans. "Trust me, this is better." She studied him for a moment. Expensive watch, tailored jacket despite it being a casual study night, posture that spoke of boarding schools and country clubs. "What do you want?" "Honest answer? I've been trying to figure out the Feldman paper Professor Armstrong assigned, and I saw you nodding during the lecture like it actually made sense." He pulled out a chair, but didn't sit. "May I?" Something about him asking permission instead of assuming made her gesture to the seat. That first night became a second, then a third. Gavin started showing up with coffee, always the exact type she'd accepted that first time, which meant he'd been paying attention. They studied, argued about economic theory, and slowly, carefully became something like friends. He talked about his family's company the way someone might talk about a beautiful house with a crumbling foundation. Hartwell Commercial Properties used to mean something. Now, we're just coasting on reputation while the market evolves past us. Claire offered perspectives, casual observations that came from a lifetime of watching her father navigate empires, though she framed them as academic interest, theory rather than experience. Gavin listened with an intensity that felt less like attraction and more like hunger, always circling back to applications, practical implementations, ways to translate ideas into profit. Months passed. Study sessions became coffee dates, became long walks where Gavin painted pictures of the future. Not their future exactly, but his future, and Claire was always positioned in it as the brilliant strategist behind his success. "You see things other people miss," he said one evening, his hand finding hers for the first time. "It's like you've been trained by someone who actually understands how power works." The comment made her stomach flip, but she laughed it off. "I just read a lot." When he kissed her outside her modest apartment building in a neighborhood that was safe but unmistakably middle class, he pulled back and said, "You're going to change my life, Claire Bennett. Not our lives. My life." She noticed the phrasing but pushed the observation away because he was looking at her like she mattered, like her mind was valuable, like intelligence was worth more than any inheritance. 3 years into their relationship, Claire finally called home from her university apartment. Gavin was at a family obligation he'd mentioned dismissively. She needed to talk to her parents alone. Her father's face appeared on the laptop screen, and she saw him taking in the cheap furniture, the small space, the performance of normalcy she'd committed to so completely. "You look happy," her mother said, appearing beside him. "Tell us about him." So Claire did. She talked about Gavin's intelligence, his ambition, his appreciation for her mind rather than things she couldn't control. She explained how he never asked about money, never questioned why a scholarship student seemed so comfortable discussing complex business strategy, never pushed for details about her family. Her father listened in silence. When she finished, he asked one question. "Does he know who you are?" "No," Claire admitted. "He assumes I'm here on academic merit from a regular family," which is partially true. The scholarship was merit-based. I just didn't correct his other assumptions. Her father's expression shifted into something Claire recognized from boardrooms and negotiations. The look that meant he was calculating moves several steps ahead. "Don't tell him yet," he said quietly. "Let me test something first. Dad, what are you?" "Trust me, sweetheart. If he loves you for the right reasons, a test won't matter. But if I'm right about what I'm seeing..." He paused, and something cold flickered across his features. "Then you need to know before you give in your heart completely." Claire wanted to protest, to defend Gavin, to insist her father was wrong. But William Bennett hadn't built an empire by misjudging people. If he sensed something wrong, there probably was something wrong. "What kind of test?" she asked quietly. "Leave that to me. Just continue as you are. Be yourself. Let the relationship develop naturally." His voice softened. "I hope I'm wrong, Claire. I truly do. But if I'm right, better you know now than after you've committed your life to someone who doesn't deserve you." 6 months later, Claire stood on the steps of Riverside Technical Institute in her graduation gown, diploma in hand. She watched Gavin pose for photographs with his family, while his father dominated every conversation about future plans and company trajectories. She'd maintained her performance flawlessly. The scholarship student, the brilliant girlfriend, the girl from a modest background who'd earned her business degree through merit alone. Gavin had grown more confident over the months, talking about their future in terms that always circled back to what she could contribute to Hartwell Properties. Her own parents had sent flowers with a card that read simply, "Proud of you. See you soon." They hadn't attended the ceremony. Too risky. Her father had said one photograph of William Bennett with his daughter could unravel everything before the final act. That evening, Gavin took her to an expensive restaurant overlooking the city. Claire knew what was coming before he reached into his jacket pocket. "Claire Bennett," he said, opening a velvet box to reveal a ring that was beautiful but not extravagant, appropriate for a man proposing to a woman he believed came from ordinary means. "You've made me better these past 4 years. Smarter, more strategic. I want you by my side as we build something incredible together. Will you marry me?" She looked at the ring, then at his face, searching for genuine love, but finding something else she couldn't quite name. "Yes," she said, because the test wasn't complete, because her father needed to see how far this would go, because she needed absolute certainty. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her. Claire smiled, even as something cold settled in her chest. The performance continued. 2 weeks after the proposal, Gavin drove Claire to the Hartwell estate for dinner with his family. The mansion rose from manicured grounds like a monument to inherited wealth, all white columns and manicured gardens. Gavin squeezed her hand as they walked up the marble steps. "Just be yourself. They're going to love you." But the moment his mother opened the door, Claire saw the assessment in her eyes. Calculating, measuring, already finding her wanting. Dinner was an interrogation disguised as polite conversation. They sat in a dining room that could seat 20, and Claire felt every question probed for weakness. "So, Claire," Gavin's father began, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "Tell us about your family background." "My father works for an investment company, and my mother is with a logistics firm," Claire said, keeping her voice steady and appropriately humble. All technically true. Her father's portfolio included investments worth billions, and her mother sat on the board of 3 major logistics corporations. How nice, his mother said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And they're comfortable with this engagement? They're happy if I'm happy. Gavin's sister, Amanda, leaned forward with false interest. And where exactly do your parents live? What neighborhood? Claire named a solidly middle-class area. Respectable, but certainly not prestigious. She watched the family exchange glances that spoke volumes. The evening continued with thinly veiled condescension wrapped in practiced politeness. When dinner ended, Gavin's mother suggested Claire might want to freshen up, directing her to a bathroom on the far side of the house. Claire took her time, knowing exactly what was happening in the dining room she'd left behind. And she was right. The moment Claire disappeared down the hallway, Richard Hartwell turned to his son with barely contained fury. Absolutely not. She's not our caliber, Gavin. We don't marry down. Dad. No. His mother's voice was ice. She seems like a nice girl, but nice doesn't pay bills or maintain status. You're a Hartwell. You can do significantly better. Amanda nodded in agreement. What will our friends think? What will the board think? Gavin leaned forward, his voice taking on the tone he used in business negotiations. Listen to what I'm actually saying. Claire isn't just some girl I'm dating. She's brilliant. Genuinely brilliant. Top of our class. Full scholarship. The kind of strategic mind that sees opportunities everyone else misses. That's wonderful for her, his mother said dismissively. But nothing. With her intelligence, her analytical skills, her ability to predict market trends, Gavin cut through their objections. She's an asset. A genuine asset to Hartwell Properties. I watched her solve problems in minutes that our entire team couldn't crack in weeks. If we bring her into the company, let her work on our strategies, we could reach entirely new heights. Richard paused, interest flickering across his features. You're saying she's useful? I'm saying she could be the difference between us staying afloat and actually dominating our sector. Her mind works differently. Better. Gavin's voice grew more confident. This isn't about love or status. This is about what she can do for our company, for our family's future. The room fell silent as his parents exchanged glances, recalculating. She'd work for the company? His father asked slowly. Her skills, her strategies, everything, all at our disposal. Gavin smiled. Think of it as an acquisition. We're not just getting a daughter-in-law. We're getting a competitive advantage. His mother's expression shifted from disapproval to consideration. And she doesn't expect much, given her background. She's humble, grateful even. She knows this marriage elevates her situation. Gavin leaned back, sensing victory. This is good business, Dad. You taught me to recognize value. Well, I'm recognizing it. Richard Hartwell nodded slowly. Fine. If you're certain she's worth it from a business perspective, we'll allow the engagement to proceed. But she needs to understand her position in this family. She will, Gavin assured them. When Claire returned to the dining room, everyone was smiling, cordial if not warm. But Claire had heard every word through the old house's terrible acoustics. She smiled back and played her role perfectly. Wedding preparations began in earnest over the following weeks. When Gavin asked about meeting her parents, Claire deployed her prepared excuse. They're traveling for work right now. Major projects overseas that they can't postpone. But they'll definitely be back for the wedding. They wouldn't miss it. She smiled apologetically. We can go ahead with all the planning. They trust my judgment completely. Gavin seemed perfectly content with this arrangement, which told Claire more than any conversation could. Venue booked. Invitations ordered. A date set for 6 weeks away. Claire played the excited bride while watching the Hartwell family treat her with barely concealed condescension. She noted every slight, every dismissive comment, every moment they thought she was too naive to notice their true feelings. What she didn't know was that during the 3rd week of wedding planning, her father had made a phone call that would change everything. Mr. Hartwell, this is William Bennett. I believe we should meet. I have a business proposition that could transform Hartwell Properties entirely. Richard Hartwell, desperate and drowning in debt he'd hidden from everyone, agreed immediately to a meeting. Richard had researched William Bennett obsessively in the 72 hours since receiving the call. Every search result made his hands shake with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. Bennett controlled an empire that made the Hartwell fortune look like pocket change. Real estate, technology, manufacturing, financial services. A web of companies so vast that most people didn't realize they were all connected to one man. He was notoriously private, rarely granted meetings. The fact that he'd reached out personally to discuss a contract was the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime, if ever. The meeting was set for a private office downtown. Neutral territory, Bennett had specified. Richard arrived 15 minutes early, wearing his best suit and carrying a portfolio of Hartwell Properties' most impressive projects. Though he suspected Bennett's team had already conducted due diligence that went deeper than anything Richard could present. William Bennett entered the room at exactly 11 o'clock, flanked by two men who radiated the quiet competence of serious security. He was tall, composed, and carried himself with the kind of authority that didn't need to announce itself. Mr. Hartwell. Bennett's handshake was firm, his gaze measuring. Thank you for meeting on short notice. The honor is mine, Mr. Bennett. Your reputation precedes you. Richard tried to keep the desperation out of his voice. I understand you have a proposition. Bennett sat, and somehow the simple act made him seem to own the room despite it not being his office. I'm consolidating several commercial development projects on the East Coast. The contract value is approximately $10 billion over 5 years. I need a company with your family's legacy and local connections to manage the execution. Richard's heart hammered against his ribs. $10 billion. It was more than salvation. It was resurrection. That's an extraordinary opportunity, Mr. Bennett. Hartwell Properties would be honored to. There's a condition. Bennett's tone didn't change, but something in the air shifted. My daughter. Richard blinked. I'm sorry. My daughter is 26. Brilliant, accomplished, but sheltered due to her position. She saw your son's photograph in the preliminary materials my team compiled on your company. Bennett leaned forward slightly. She's expressed interest in meeting him, in pursuing a relationship. The words hung in the air as Richard's mind raced through implications, complications, opportunities. Your daughter wants to meet Gavin? More than meet. She wants to marry him if they're compatible. Bennett's expression remained neutral. I'm a protective father, Mr. Hartwell. My daughter's happiness matters to me. The contract is contingent on your son giving her a genuine chance at a relationship. Richard's mind was already planning the conversation with Gavin. May I have some time to discuss this with my son? You have 48 hours. If he's interested, we'll arrange a meeting. If not, Bennett's shrug was elegant and final. I'll find another company to manage the development, and my daughter will find another young man to be interested in. They shook hands again, and Richard left the building, his phone already in his hand before he reached the parking garage. Gavin was waiting in the study when Richard arrived home, pacing near the window with the restless energy of someone who sensed opportunity but couldn't yet see its shape. What's going on, Dad? You sounded urgent. Sit down. Richard poured himself a scotch, the amber liquid catching the afternoon light. What I'm about to tell you changes everything. Gavin took the seat across from the desk, leaning forward. The meeting went well. Better than well. I just met with William Bennett. Richard watched his son's blank expression. The name means nothing to you because he's deliberately private, operates through proxies and subsidiaries. But son, this man controls more wealth than everyone in our social circle combined. An empire so vast most people don't even know it exists. And he wants to work with us. That's incredible. Gavin's voice carried disbelief and hunger in equal measure. What kind of work? He's offering us a $10 billion contract over 5 years. Commercial development across the entire East Coast. Richard let that sink in. It would save the company. More than save it. It would make us untouchable for generations. Gavin stood, energy crackling through him. That's incredible. When do we start? What's the timeline? There's a condition. Richard's tone shifted, and Gavin froze. His daughter saw your photograph in the preliminary materials. She's interested in you romantically. The room went silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. "I'm engaged to Claire," Gavin said carefully. "I know. Bennett knows too." Richard swirled his scotch. "But think strategically for a moment. We agreed to let you marry Claire because of what she brings: intelligence, strategic thinking, potential value to the company." "Correct. Yes. But now there's an option that brings all of that plus a $10 billion contract, plus connections to one of the wealthiest families in the country, plus resources that would elevate the Hartwell name beyond anything we've achieved in 3 generations. Richard leaned forward. "Son, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm asking you to think about which path serves our family's future better." Gavin turned away, gripping the back of a chair. "What about Claire? We're planning a wedding. Her parents are coming. The invitations are already sent. And weddings can be called off. It happens." Richard's voice was matter-of-fact. "Bennett's daughter offers an opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. Claire is smart, certainly, but she's also ordinary from an ordinary background. She'll recover and find someone more suited to her station." The words hung in the air. Richard watched his son's face carefully, seeing the internal calculation playing out. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Gavin asked slowly. Richard set down his glass with deliberate care. "Continue with the wedding preparations. Keep Claire placated and unsuspecting. Then on the wedding day itself, at the altar, in front of everyone, you end it publicly. Make it clear she was never really at your level, that this was a mistake you're correcting before it's too late." "You want me to humiliate her publicly?" Gavin's voice held shock, but Richard noticed it wasn't refusal. "I want you to make a clean break in a way that protects our reputation. If you quietly call off the wedding, people will speculate about what we did wrong, what scandal we're hiding. But if you end at the altar, making it clear she wasn't suitable, that you realized her inadequacy just in time." Richard spread his hands. "Then we're the ones who dodged a bullet. Our reputation stays intact, and we're free to pursue the Bennett connection." "That's brutal, Dad. That's business." Richard stood, moving around the desk. "And honestly, son, did you ever really love her? Or did you love what she could do for you?" The pause before Gavin answered was damning. "She's been useful, important to my success at university." "Exactly. Useful. But Bennett's daughter is transformative." Richard put a hand on his son's shoulder. "I know it feels harsh, but in 10 years, when you're running an empire instead of struggling to maintain a legacy, you'll understand this was the only choice." Gavin stared at the floor, jaw working. Then he looked up, and Richard saw the decision in his eyes. The same cold calculation Richard himself had made countless times in business. "All right," Gavin said quietly. "We continue with the wedding. I'll handle Claire at the altar. Make it clean and public. Then we're free to move forward with Bennett." "Good man." Richard squeezed his shoulder, pride and relief flooding through him. What neither of them knew was that the test was already complete, and they had failed spectacularly. Richard sent his message to William Bennett that evening. "Mr. Bennett, my son and I have discussed your proposition thoroughly. He is honored by your daughter's interest and eager to meet her. There is a prior engagement that requires resolution, but he will handle it definitively at the upcoming wedding ceremony. Afterward, he will be completely available to pursue a relationship with your daughter. We look forward to moving forward with both the personal connection and the business arrangement." The response came within 5 minutes. "Understood. My daughter and I will attend the wedding to witness the resolution personally. Afterward, we can proceed. The contract will be finalized pending the successful conclusion of personal matters." Richard read it twice, a flicker of surprise passing through him. Bennett wanted to attend the wedding. Unusual, but perhaps the man wanted to see Gavin handle difficulty with grace. "We would be honored by your presence," he responded. The week before the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations. Claire finalized details with the florist, the caterer, the musicians. She smiled through dress fittings and cake tastings, playing her role perfectly while her heart grew heavier with each passing day. Gavin was attentive but distant, and Claire recognized the behavior now. He was already disconnecting, preparing himself for what he was about to do. She'd seen it in business negotiations her father had taken her to as a child. The moment someone decided to walk away from a deal, there was a subtle shift in their demeanor. "Are you okay?" she asked him one evening as they reviewed the seating chart. "Just nervous," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Wedding jitters." Claire nodded, but she knew the truth. Her father had confirmed it 3 days earlier in a phone call. "They took the bait," William Bennett had said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "He's planning to humiliate you at the altar, sweetheart. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" "I need to see it myself, Dad. I need to know completely and absolutely that this is who he really is." "I understand." Her father's voice softened. "Your mother and I will be there. And Claire, I promise you, they will regret every second of what they're about to do." The morning of the wedding, Claire stood in front of the mirror in her bridal suite, adjusting her veil. The white dress was perfect, the cathedral was ready, 200 guests were waiting. Her hands were steady. She wasn't nervous. She was prepared. A knock at the door made her turn. Her mother slipped inside, elegant in a simple navy dress that didn't draw attention. "You look beautiful," her mother said, pulling Claire into a hug. "Mom, I know, sweetheart. I know." Her mother pulled back, cupping Claire's face in her hands. "You're the strongest person I know. What you're doing today takes incredible courage. I just need to be sure. And after today, you will be. No doubts, no what-ifs." Her mother's eyes blazed with protective fury. "And then your father and I will make sure the Hartwell family understands exactly what they've lost and what they're about to face." The processional music began. Claire took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the cathedral doors. It was time for the final act of this performance. And Claire Bennett had always been exceptional at playing her part. The cathedral was everything Claire had dreamed of when she was younger. White roses cascading down marble columns, sunlight streaming through stained glass. 200 guests waiting to witness what she had once believed would be the happiest day of her life. She walked down the aisle alone, her eyes finding Gavin at the altar. But something in his expression made her stomach flutter with unease. Not love, not joy, but something cold she couldn't identify, or rather, something she could identify, but had been hoping she wouldn't see. When she reached him and took his hands, they were ice cold. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the vaulted space. Claire tried to catch Gavin's eyes, to find reassurance there, but he was looking past her at his family in the front row. Then everything shattered. "Actually, I need to stop this." Gavin pulled his hands away, his voice carrying across the cathedral with practiced cruelty. "I can't marry you, Claire." The words hit her like physical blows, even though she'd known they were coming. Knowing didn't make the pain less real. "What?" she whispered, playing her part. "You're not right for this family. You never were." His tone was casual, devastating. "Let's be honest. You're beneath our level. I was using you for your intelligence, your strategies, but I found a better opportunity now." Claire's mind reeled, even as part of her watched from a distance, cataloging every word, every gesture, every person's reaction. "Gavin, what are you saying?" His mother stood from the front row, voice dripping with venom. "Did you really think you belonged here? Look at yourself. Pathetic. We've been laughing at you for months," his sister added, standing as well. "The scholarship girl who thought she could marry into our family." The humiliation came fast and vicious. Insults from every direction. Laughter echoing off stone walls. Gavin's family surrounding her like predators who'd been waiting for this moment, savoring every second of her public destruction. Then someone, a cousin, Claire thought distantly, dumped water over her head. Claire gasped as cold liquid soaked through her dress. The shock was real. The betrayal was real. The pain was devastatingly, completely real. Another person poured champagne down her back while the Hartwell family laughed, their enjoyment of her humiliation written clearly across their faces. "This is what happens when you forget your place," Gavin's father announced to the crowd, his voice booming with satisfaction. Gavin grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise, his face twisted with contempt. "You were always just useful, Claire. A tool for the company. But I don't need you anymore." He shoved her, making her stumble and fall to her knees on the marble floor. Claire knelt there in her ruined dress, water and champagne dripping from her hair. Her chest felt like it was caving in. This was the man she'd loved. This was the man she'd trusted with her heart, her dreams, her future. And he was destroying her in front of everyone she knew, taking pleasure in her pain. Tears blurred her vision as hands pushed her down every time she tried to stand. The Hartwell family's laughter rang in her ears. Several guests had left in disgust, but most stayed frozen in their seats, unable to look away from the spectacle unfolding before them. Claire felt the weight of every eye in the cathedral, the recording phones, the whispered comments. She felt the years with Gavin, the study sessions, the coffee dates, the conversations about the future, crumbling into ash. She'd given him everything. Her time, her knowledge, her strategies, her love. And this was how he repaid her, with public humiliation and cruelty. Through her tears, through the pain, Claire waited for the sound she knew was coming, the sound that would change everything. The cathedral doors didn't open gently. They exploded inward with force that made the sound crack through the air like thunder, cutting through the Hartwell family's laughter like a knife. Claire looked up through her tears to see three figures entering the cathedral. Two people flanked by men in dark suits whose presence made the air itself feel dangerous, whose movements spoke of military precision and absolute authority. Her parents. They walked down the aisle with terrible purpose. Her father's face carved from ice, her mother's eyes blazing with protective fury. The security detail spread out with practiced efficiency, positioning themselves at strategic points throughout the cathedral. Every sound died. Every person froze. Claire stared at her parents in confusion, still on her knees, still trying to understand why they looked like that. Why everyone was suddenly silent. Why Gavin's face had gone white as death. Why his father looked like he was about to collapse. Dad! Her voice broke on the word. Mom, what's happening? Her father reached her, and his expression when he looked down at her, at his daughter kneeling in a destroyed wedding dress, humiliated and broken, was the most terrifying thing Claire had ever seen. Pure, controlled rage. He helped her stand gently, pulling her close with one arm. Then he turned to face the Hartwell family, and his voice, when he spoke, was quiet and controlled and absolutely deadly. My name is William Bennett. Recognition crashed through the cathedral like a wave. Gasps, shocked whispers, the sound of phones clattering to the floor. Richard Hartwell's legs actually buckled, forcing him to grab the pew for support. Gavin stood frozen, his brain clearly struggling to connect the modest middle-class father Claire had described with the billionaire titan standing before him. And you just made the worst mistake of your lives. Claire is my daughter, William continued, his arm tightening protectively around Claire's trembling shoulders. My only daughter, and I just watched you assault her, humiliate her, and throw her away like garbage. He pulled out his phone with his free hand, never breaking eye contact with Richard Hartwell. Give me legal and acquisitions, he said into the phone. I want Hartwell commercial properties bankrupted within 30 minutes. Accelerate all their debt. Call in every loan. Freeze their accounts. I want them destroyed. He paused, listening, his eyes never leaving Richard's terrified face. Yes, all of it. Every subsidiary, every asset, every connection. And make sure everyone knows why. Make sure the entire business community understands what happens when you betray a Bennett. He lowered the phone and looked at Richard with contempt. You gambled my daughter for a contract you'll never see. Congratulations, Mr. Hartwell. You just destroyed your family's legacy for a test you failed. A test. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Did you really think I'd give a $10 billion contract to a man who'd betray an engagement for money? William's laugh was bitter. I was testing you. Testing whether you and your son had any integrity, any honor, any genuine decency. He looked at Gavin with disgust. You failed spectacularly. Gavin finally found his voice, his eyes wide with panic. Mr. Bennett, please, I didn't know. You didn't know she was my daughter. William's voice cut through the air. But you knew she was a human being who loved you. You knew she'd given you 4 years of her life. You knew she'd helped you, supported you, shared her knowledge and strategies with you. And the moment you thought you'd found someone with more money, you decided to destroy her publicly to make yourself look better. William nodded to someone at the back of the cathedral. Police officers emerged from where they'd been waiting in the shadows, moving toward the Hartwell family with handcuffs ready. "You're all under arrest for assault," one officer announced. The Hartwell family erupted in panic. Amanda screamed. Richard tried to argue, his words tumbling over each other in desperation. Gavin reached toward Claire, his face a mask of regret and fear. "Claire, please. Please, I didn't know. If I had known who you were." She looked at him through tears. This man who'd claimed to love her, who'd valued her only for what she could provide, who destroyed her the moment he thought he'd found something better. "That's exactly the problem," she said quietly, her voice stronger than she felt. "You only care now because of who my father is. Everything you just did, that cruelty, that humiliation, that betrayal, that's who you really are. The fact that I'm a Bennett doesn't change what you did. It just changes the consequences." Officers moved through the cathedral with practiced efficiency, reading rights, securing suspects. The Hartwell family's protests echoed off vaulted ceilings. Amanda sobbing, Richard arguing about his connections and influence, Gavin's mother demanding to speak to a lawyer. But William Bennett's influence ran deeper than any connection the Hartwells had ever possessed. Claire's mother wrapped an elegant coat around Claire's shoulders, shielding her from the cameras, from the staring guests, from the wreckage of what should have been her wedding day. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," her mother whispered, pulling her close. "Your father suspected what they were, so he tested them. We never wanted you to go through this pain." "I had to know," Claire said, watching Gavin being handcuffed, watching his family's empire crumble in real time. "I had to see it for myself. Had to be absolutely certain. She'd loved him. She'd trusted him. And he'd shown her exactly what that love was worth the moment he thought she had nothing to offer." William's phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, then nodded with grim satisfaction. "Hartwell Commercial Properties stock has collapsed. Trading halted. Their credit lines are frozen. Board members are resigning." He looked at Richard Hartwell being led away in handcuffs. "By tomorrow morning, the Hartwell name won't be worth the paper it's printed on." Guests began filing out, some offering Claire sympathetic looks, others avoiding her eyes entirely. But every single one of them had witnessed what happened. Every single one would remember. The story would spread. Not as the Hartwells had planned, with Claire humiliated and dismissed, but as a cautionary tale about arrogance, cruelty, and the cosmic justice of karma. One of the security detail approached William. "Sir, the media is gathering outside. How would you like to handle it?" "I'll make a statement." William looked at Claire. "Unless you'd prefer to?" Claire thought about it for a moment, about standing in front of cameras in her ruined wedding dress, telling the world what Gavin Hartwell had done. But she was tired. So tired. "You handle it, Dad. I just want to go home." William nodded, understanding in his eyes. He addressed his security team. "Get my daughter to the car safely. Route her through the private exit. No cameras, no questions." As they prepared to leave, Gavin called out from where officers held him. "Claire, Claire, please. Just give me a chance to explain." She paused at the cathedral entrance, looking back at him one final time. He looked smaller now, diminished. All his confidence, his charm, his casual cruelty, stripped away to reveal the weak, opportunistic man underneath. "There's nothing to explain, Gavin," she said. "You showed me exactly who you are, and I'll never forget it." Outside, her father faced a wall of cameras and microphones. "Today, my daughter was assaulted and publicly humiliated by the Hartwell family in what can only be described as a calculated act of cruelty," William Bennett said, his voice carrying authority that made reporters stop shouting questions. "The Hartwells believe my daughter came from a modest background. They believe she had nothing but her intelligence and her heart to offer. And they decided that wasn't enough." He paused, letting that sink in. They were wrong on multiple counts. But even if Claire had been exactly who they thought she was, a scholarship student from a middle-class family, she still would have deserved respect. She still would have deserved honesty. She still would have deserved to be treated with basic human decency. Cameras flashed as reporters scribbled notes. "The Hartwells will face criminal charges for assault. They will face civil litigation for damages. and they will face the complete collapse of their business empire. Not because they failed to recognize my daughter's background, but because they revealed themselves to be people without integrity, without honor, and without the basic capacity for human empathy that should define us all. He looked directly into the cameras. Let this be a lesson to anyone who believes someone's worth is determined by their bank account or their family name. Claire Bennett is extraordinary not because of who her father is, but because of who she is: brilliant, kind, resilient, and brave. The Hartwells had the privilege of knowing her, and they threw it away for greed. William Bennett walked away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions that followed him. In the car, Claire leaned against her mother and finally let herself cry. Not for Gavin, not for the wedding, but for the girl she'd been when this all started. The girl who'd believed that intelligence and love were enough. That girl was gone, and the woman who remained would never be so naive again. 6 months later, Claire stood in her father's office high above the city, looking out at a skyline that seemed different somehow. Sharper, clearer. The Hartwell family had indeed faced every consequence her father had promised. Richard and his wife served 18 months for assault. Gavin served 12 months. Amanda received probation and community service. But the legal consequences paled in comparison to the social and professional devastation. The business collapsed entirely, assets sold off to pay debts and settlements. Their name became synonymous with greed and betrayal. Former friends and associates disappeared like smoke. Gavin had tried to write to her from prison. Long letters full of apologies and explanations, claiming he'd been manipulated by his father, claiming he'd really loved her, claiming he'd changed. Claire had returned every letter unopened. "You're thinking about him," her father said, entering the office with 2 cups of coffee. "Not really." Claire accepted the cup. "Just thinking about who I was then versus who I am now." "And who are you now?" Claire smiled. "Someone who knows her worth. Someone who understands that respect and integrity aren't negotiable. Someone who won't settle for people who only value what I can do for them." She'd spent the past 6 months working with her father's companies, learning the family business from the inside. She'd also established a foundation that provided scholarships to students from modest backgrounds. But unlike her own scholarship, these came with full transparency about the foundation's backing and support that extended beyond just tuition. "The university called," her mother said, entering the office. "They want you to speak at graduation next month. About resilience, overcoming public adversity, that sort of thing." "I'll do it," Claire said immediately, because her story, painful as it had been, had value. Not as a tale of revenge or vindication, but as a reminder that someone's worth isn't determined by their background, their bank account, or their last name. It's determined by how they treat others, especially those they believe have less power than themselves. Her father's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and showed Claire the screen. It was a news alert. Former Hartwell Properties executive Gavin Hartwell, released from prison, seeks fresh start. The article included a recent photo. Gavin looked older, tired, diminished. He'd given an interview claiming he'd learned from his mistakes, that he was a changed man, that he hoped Claire had found happiness. Claire felt nothing looking at his photo. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering hurt. Just nothing. He'd been a chapter in her life, and that chapter was closed. "You know," her mother said thoughtfully, "I think the worst punishment for people like the Hartwells isn't prison or bankruptcy or social exile." "What is it?" Claire asked, living with the knowledge of what they lost, what they could have had if they'd just been decent people. Her mother smiled sadly. Gavin could have married a brilliant, kind woman who genuinely loved him. He could have built something real. Instead, he has nothing but regrets and what-ifs. Claire nodded slowly. "He made his choice. And you're making yours," her father said. "Every day, choosing kindness, choosing integrity, choosing to build rather than destroy." That evening, Claire attended a charity gala with her parents. She wore a stunning blue dress, her head held high, her smile genuine. Several young professionals approached her during the night, some offering business opportunities, others offering introductions, a few offering romantic interest. She evaluated each interaction carefully, watching for signs. Did they see her as a person or an opportunity? Did they listen or just wait for their turn to talk? Did they ask about her thoughts, her interests, her dreams, or just about her father's companies? Most failed those simple tests. But one young woman, a software developer with bright eyes and infectious enthusiasm, passed them all. They talked about artificial intelligence ethics, about using technology for social good, about the responsibility that came with power and privilege. No mention of money, no mention of connections, just genuine conversation between two people who found each other interesting. I'd love to continue this conversation, the woman said as the evening wound down. Maybe coffee sometime? I'd like that, Claire said, exchanging contact information. As Claire left the gala with her parents, her father asked, "So, anyone interesting?" "Maybe," Claire said, a small smile playing at her lips. "But I'm not in a hurry. I learned my lesson about rushing into things with people who only want me for what I can give them." "Smart woman," her mother said proudly. Claire looked back at the glittering ballroom, at the city lights beyond, at the life she was building on her own terms. She thought about the girl who'd walked down that cathedral aisle 6 months ago. That girl had been naive, yes, but she'd also been brave. Brave enough to seek truth even when it hurt. Brave enough to stand up after being knocked down. Brave enough to turn devastating betrayal into wisdom. Claire Bennett, scholarship student, billionaire's daughter, survivor of public humiliation, was still that brave girl. But now she was also so much more. And she would never, ever forget the lessons Gavin Hartwell had taught her about the true nature of people's character, about the importance of integrity over opportunity, about the value of kindness in a world that often rewards cruelty. She would never forget, and she would never settle for less than she deserved again. Final message. Dear viewers, always treat everyone with genuine respect regardless of their perceived background, because you never truly know who stands before you. Claire's story teaches us that humility, respect, and genuine love should never be conditional on someone's bank account or social status. Treating others with dignity isn't just morally right, it's also the smartest thing you can do, because you never know who you're really dealing with. But more importantly, Claire's story reminds us that our worth isn't determined by others' recognition of it. Whether the Hartwells had known she was a billionaire's daughter or not, Claire deserved respect. Every person deserves respect. What lessons did you take from Claire's experience? If you were in her position, what would you have done differently? Subscribe for more captivating stories that deliver powerful life lessons. Thumbs up like this video if Claire's story moved you. Speech balloon comment below with your thoughts. We read every single one. Loudspeakers share this story with someone who needs to hear this message. Remember, true character is revealed not by how we treat those who can help us, but by how we treat those we think can't. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Waving hand.